Hello, hello. Welcome back to the P2P Soap Box. I'm your host and P2P BFF, Marcie Maxwell. One persistent challenge we see across our industry is how large national nonprofits can maintain efficiency and consistency while preserving the all-important, authentic local connections that make peer-to-peer fundraising so powerful. So here's the question we're diving into today. How do you centralize operations without losing the community heart of your programs? Too many organizations swing too far in one direction, either creating administrative chaos with fully decentralized structures or implementing rigid national models that strip away the local flavors that donors love. So what's the sweet spot? Finding the right balance between standardization and localization. So today I'm joined by Andi Hughes, Vice President of Signature Peer-to-Peer Programs at Susan G. Komen. Susan G. Komen is the world's leading nonprofit breast cancer organization working to save lives and end breast cancer forever. Their More Than Pink Walk and Race for the Cure series has been a mainstay in the U.S. peer-to-peer top 30 and ranked number 21 in 2024. Andi has led Komen through a major organizational transformation, moving from a decentralized model to centralized program support. She's navigated the complex challenges of bringing national consistency to events that thrive on local community connections, all while managing change across field and national teams with different perspectives and different priorities. So from deciding which decisions stay local to measuring success beyond just revenue, Andi shares how Komen is proving you can have both efficiency and authenticity. So let's jump right in to my conversation with Susan G. Komen's Andi Hughes. Andi, welcome to the P2P Soap Box. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. I love the peer-to-peer conference.
It loves you too.
I feel like I've grown up with it, truly. It's amazing.
Same.
Right?
I think this year will mark my 18th conference. So
Wow.
I literally have grown up with it. So
amazing.
First of all, just tell us a little bit about your personal, professional journey that led you to your role currently at Susan G. Komen.
Well, I've been doing this for a long time. I can't believe this. This is actually, I'm coming up on 30 years in the peer-to-peer nonprofit space. I like to say I started when I was 12.
Yes.
No, I did. I started right out of college at the American Cancer Society, and I was there for 26 years in various different roles. I think I had 14 different roles when I was at the American Cancer Society, everything from cancer control to communications and marketing. And then shifted over to peer-to-peer events. So working on Relay for Life, and then many, many years working on making strides against breast cancer. And then working in communications and marketing. And then came over to Susan G. Komen and have been here now. It'll be 3 years in August. And I started off working on the 3-day as the 3-day director. And now am the VP of peer-to-peer events, overseeing Race for the Cure, the More Than Pink Walk, and the 3-day.
That's fantastic. So Susan G. Komen, like so many organizations, has really gone through some transformation over the past couple of years, really in terms of their structure and how they operate. So I want to kind of start big picture first. Why did Susan G. Komen decide to move towards more of a centralized model for supporting its peer-to-peer programs, as opposed to how it operated previously? And kind of what were the goals? Like, what was the organization hoping to achieve with that change?
Well, there were larger organizational goals, obviously, in bringing together all the affiliates and consolidation, that I can't speak to all of that. But from the peer-to-peer space, offering the centralized support, as many of us know who have been at organizations who have gone through the change of market specific or, field specific support of events to a centralized structure, there's efficiencies. You can start to develop consistent branding, efficiencies of scale when it comes to printing, producing, contracts with production companies, et cetera. So lots and lots of benefits. to having a centralized structure. Everything from training to shared resources to being able to collect best practices and be able to socialize those out to the markets. Lots and lots of benefits.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. I've worked at organizations that operate both ways. One where everything was very centralized, very kind of driven from the top, and others where everything was still extremely localized and extremely guided by a specific market. And the national team was there kind of just to provide ideas and recommendations as opposed to kind of that strategy. And there's pros and cons, right? Like, I think the argument is always, when you centralize, what do you lose? Right. So what are some of those kind of upsides and challenges? What have been some of those benefits and really, or even some of the drawbacks of the centralized program support?
First off, I think it's a process. And having gone through it a few times, I think the process seems to be very similar from organization to organization in that first there's trying to explain the benefits to the markets, to the local field of why this will make sense, but why you won't lose your autonomy, why you are still empowered to make decisions, but that you will benefit from additional support, that you will certain rocks in your backpack, so to speak, will be taken out. You won't have to worry about the emails that need to go out. You won't have to worry about all the social posts that you are creating and sending. You won't have to worry about. So there's this whole list of things that you're communicating to the field that we're going to take that off of you. We're going to offer this support so you can focus on selling sponsorships, customer relationship management, stewarding those high value donors and your top teams and top team captains. So you start off with that phase of just really trying to articulate the benefits to the structure. And sometimes that also means offering budget support from a central standpoint too. Hey, we'll buy this signage package for you because we would like all events to be using this branded signage package. We will pay for the production vendor for this because we would like to see consistency across all the events. But then I do feel like you move on to another stage where you start to realize that there are major efficiencies. And to be honest, I do think from a centralized standpoint, you start to say, hey, it probably makes more sense for you to pay for the signs or for you to pay for some of these items. So sometimes there's a shift that happens because if you keep paying for things centrally and it's not on the field to see that expense within their structure, it can start to feel like free money. And you never want it, for the mission, you don't ever want people to feel like, oh, well, my signage looks a little raggedy, or I don't need to worry about it because I'll just get a signage package from the national office, that they need to feel really accountable for every dollar that's being spent. So, so that second stage is also starting to negotiate the cost structures and what those looks like, what the processes look like. And that's where it gets really gummy, right? I mean, we need process, but also process can really be challenging at times. Right? I mean, you don't want to create too much red tape, but at the same time, there need to be a certain amount of checks and balances and processes that need to be put in place for centrally ordering T-shirts, ordering signage, being able to make changes to the website or send out emails on your behalf, essentially, those types of things. And that can sometimes be the con. I mean, I don't know that there's any organization that's been able to get that just right in terms of making a process that really benefits the field and also is accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish with the process from a centralized standpoint.
I think your key point on the beginning conversation is there's just a lot of fear in change always, right? I can think of even so much at an organization of focusing on a centralized website. And I came in selling it hard, saying, this is going to free up your time and this is going to allow you to do X, Y, Z, not realizing that there was somebody whose job that was in the local market who now felt that their job was threatened. They now felt like, well, somebody's going to do this at the national office. That's freeing up time. But like, what does that mean for me? And so I think that was a real, kind of hitch in the conversation for me, having to sit there and go, oh, okay, how do I sell this? How do I get them on board with this without people feeling threatened and focusing more on this, what this is going to allow you to do? Again, I love your analogy of taking rocks out of the backpack, like of what are all of those things that you just sit there and you say, God, if I only had more time to do X, Y, Z, and how with centralizing, we're giving you back the gift of time. And some of that may even be to improve your work-life balance. It may not even, it allows you to pick up new tasks. It also allows you to, have a life, which a lot of us in the nonprofit world struggle with. What's that?
You made a great point though, which reminds me that the key piece through all of this transition is communication. Because from the centralized standpoint, you can think that centralizing the website, centralizing email, social, you could really pick anything, is going to do the job. It's going to be the way to go. But if you're not still really listening and communicating with the field and what they need, and therefore what their constituents need, you really can have some missteps. So it's important to hear like, oh, you need to be able to text because that helps develop the relationship locally. Oh, you need to be able to customize this email in order to be able to communicate with your constituents about local happenings that then creates year-round engagement and ups your retention. Sometimes things can just seem like they make sense until you are connecting more with the staff who are forward-facing with the participant, and they have a better understanding of how something works better for relationship management. So you've got to be listening.
Well, and I think it's the relationship management. And then I also think one of the concerns people often have with centralizing is, how do we maintain the local flavor, right? How do we still make sure this feels like a Komen event in Memphis, Tennessee, or a Komen event in Boston, Massachusetts, or in Seattle, Washington, and what needs to be the same versus what does get to highlight a little bit of that local community. And so how do you kind of maintain that or allow for that kind of local flavor, autonomy, as opposed to kind of the brand standards?
And that's the challenge, right? Because you want to make sure that you can keep the event standards and the consistency that you're looking for from a branding perspective, while also making sure that on the local level, they can keep that, like you were saying, the local flavor, customization, make sure that there are elements, key elements that are working, not just for the participants and the survivors, but for the sponsors too, right? In order to have that authentic relationship with a sponsor, you need to sometimes be able to customize certain elements of the event to make sure that it's benefiting the sponsor as well as benefiting us. So it's a tricky dance. I think the best way to go about it is to put together a team of folks from the field, those who work on events, different leadership levels who are able to come together and talk about what they think should be standard across the events. What are those things that really should be up to the events to customize? When you bring together a cross-functional team across the organization, that's when you're going to get your best work and your buy-in, which is so important.
Well, and I also think sometimes we get hung up on the local flavor and of what that actually means. I think of, the local flavor often has nothing to do with the brand or even the event execution at all. It's what food are you serving? Who is the local host that is emceeing the event? What are the local volunteer groups that are going to be on the sidelines? What kind of music are you playing? Those have nothing to do with the brand, but I think sometimes people, they get so caught up in, they want to control everything instead of saying, what are the 5 things or the 10 things that are going to make your event feel uniquely Boston or uniquely Charleston or uniquely Miami. That has nothing to do with the greater, and let's have some fun energy around that and making that local with your committee. Is one of the things that I see.
Well, and I think, again, now I think it goes back to communication, because sometimes when talking about local and trying to get to the bottom of, so what are we really talking about? Sometimes it just has to do with what the pictures look like in a lot of the promotional materials.
Yeah.
So like getting down to well, you keep showing sweatshirts and coats in pictures, marketing materials that are for my Florida event. So it doesn't feel like there aren't any palm trees, there aren't any short sleeves, there aren't any. So sometimes it has to do with having a conversation to dig into. So what is it that local means to you? And how can we help meet that need? And then, so maybe it comes down to templated marketing materials where you can plug in pictures with palm trees, but you can also plug in pictures with sweatshirts so that you make sure that it's feeling like the marketing materials are meeting the needs for all markets.
Yep, I agree. And that's giving me flashbacks to conversations about sweatshirts versus palm trees. That is for sure.
Truly, over 20 years of being in the peer-to-peer space, the amount of times that I have had conversations about palm trees versus sweatshirts in promotional materials. And in all honesty, it's a tough one sometimes, right? Because we're the paid social that's going out from a centralized vendor for all of the events. When you have an event series, you are just picking a handful of photos. And sometimes it can be tough to have promotional and marketing materials that are going to meet the needs of both our sunny climate and our cooler climate. So,
you also talked about expenses. And I think that is always really key, because I feel like one of the other challenges sometimes is people they have an opportunity. They've got a national t-shirt vendor, but they have a local sponsor that's willing to do something for them for free, or a signage company that's willing to say, well, we'll print all your signage as part of our sponsorship. But then you've got these national rules of sponsorship needs to be printed XYZ. Have y'all come up with kind of solutions for some of those pieces, especially as maybe expenses shift back to the local markets?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because there are those instances where an event can get something in kind. So they're saying, how is it less expensive if I can get it for free here versus you paying? And the tough answer is, it depends. I mean, that's the real answer, because if you're in good communication with the field and with the markets, so you have that direct line where somebody can communicate that relationship with you, they probably should go in your RFP process. You probably should be talking to them about what that in-kind might look like. I am a firm believer that there really shouldn't be black and white in a lot of these scenarios. You've got to leave room for the gray. You have to leave room to talk to a vendor that is willing to do something in kind. Because if they were willing to do it for one event, maybe they're willing to do it for 5, maybe for 15. So I don't think we should ever be so focused on centralized processes and support that we are no longer open to creative ways of doing things in order to save money. That has to always be priority number one. The longer answer, though, is sometimes if you're dealing with 100 events and one event could get in kind, the amount of hours that go into developing whatever the files are, the PDF, working with that one vendor to develop the 2 signs. If half of the 100 events we're trying to work in that way, it then affects the efficiency to scale for all of the events. So where signage package might have been, $1,000, now the signage package becomes $2,500 because the other events are not partaking. So it's a lot more difficult of an answer than sometimes it seems when you're talking economies of scale.
So in addition to opening up new doors for collaboration and kind of creating that local relationship, I'm sure that centralizing has brought about other kind of new opportunities that maybe you could only dream of implementing when everything was a little bit more regionalized or localized. So what have been some of your successes?
Well, there's the kind of no-brainer one, which is the marketing budget. I mean, when you're centralized, you can then take advantage of a centralized marketing budget to be able to provide air cover for all of the events and to be able to make some, paid digital social media buys, display ads, search, et cetera. So that one, without a doubt, when you centralize is really beneficial for all of the events. And we've seen that help in registrations every year. With the centralized marketing budget, paid social, we've been able to increase participation year over year. The other is still along the lines of marketing, but being able to develop national campaigns that everyone benefits from. So whether it is a 30 by 30 challenge, we did if you register by the 30th and raise $30, you receive these shoelaces, that sort of thing. Being able to offer that to all events across the nation, it was very successful. It increased our registration, self-donations, overall revenue, retention rates, et cetera. And that's the kind of thing, doing a national challenge, that they would not have been able to do without centralizing. And there have been a number of others, whether it's a match fundraising challenge or a team leader recognition gift, et cetera. So that's another big benefit.
Well, and I think what is the downstream effect of that is that then it reinforces to the local markets the benefits of this centralized model, because you're able to say, look at these new things that we're able to deliver to you in a way that I just think kind of creates a more positive sentiment to it.
And the seeing is believing, right? So once they see like, oh, wow, I did not have to craft the rules, pull all the data, make all the creative, send all that out myself. They really did just do it. And I reaped the benefits. I now have more people registered. I have more people raising money. So the proof is in the pudding. Like once you start to really see, oh, and I didn't have to pay for it. That's really when you start to experience the benefit and it starts to pay off. And people, you've given them a reason to believe. So.
Right. I can think of an example of a previous organization working on kind of a national corporate team campaign where, the national corporate team was selling in national companies to participate. And I think at first there was this feeling of, but they're in my market. But then I was able to say to the field offices, but I literally now you have 10 companies that are literally just waiting for you to pick up the phone call and activate them. Like they've already said yes. And I think once they saw that as you don't have to go recruit them, you literally just now get to go help them raise money. They saw it as like a gift. Basically, I'm like, here's 10 more teams to help you reach your goal. And I think, again, it kind of was that seeing is believing. And then if we're able to say, we're going to run a campaign with our national corporate partners to get them to sign up and get them on board. And then they see those numbers hitting their local event budget and they're suddenly excited by it and they start to feel kind of that motivation of what the partnership can look like.
Komen has even just within the last year created a centralized incentive program, fundraising incentive program. And that has taken a while for people to realize, oh, so they get points, they being anyone who fundraises for Susan G. Komen, and those points they can go online and redeem for these cool prizes. I don't need to come up with local challenges and local prizes, and they get to choose. Do they want socks or do they want a hat? And those are the types of things. And then obviously we are financially benefiting from those economies of scale to be able to have a national incentive program.
So that was kind of one of the last things I wanted to ask you about is obviously you make a big change like this and you want to see justification for the change. You don't want it to be change for the sake of change. So what metrics are you watching and kind of looking at to see that you're on the right track?
The big ones, that we all look at with our peer-to-peer programs. So definitely growth. We have a 3-year roadmap. Again, something else that didn't exist before the centralized structures is developing those strategic plans, multi-year strategic plans where you're looking at growth. So we're looking at increases in participation. Retention is a really big one for us. Something that going to the peer-to-peer professional forum that we've seen when we look against our peers that weren't quite where we wanted to be. So we've been really focusing on bringing those retention numbers up. The amount of donations, self-donations, the dollar per for all participants, also the fundraising amount. So those that are raising more than a dollar or more. So we keep a close eye on all of those. We've got a scorecard, another wonderful tool that we're able to have because we're centralized. We're able to have some great CRM databases now where we can look at trends and data and serve up some great data where people can now see for their event, oh, if I just do this, I can increase this lever with the data that will help me reach my goal. So because we now have a centralized scorecard that we send out every week where you can see exactly where your event is on all the major KPIs. So there are just so many benefits. I could talk about them all day long.
No, I understand. Well, I know that a lot of people know about Susan G. Komen, but if there are people that are looking to get more involved, take advantage of the services you offer, looking for a job, how can people get involved? Where can we send them in our show notes?
www.komen.org has information on jobs, information on how you can get help for anyone who's been affected by breast cancer, as well as all the ways to fundraise and join our events. It's all right there.
All right. Thank you so much, Andi.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too.
The P2P Soap Box is produced in partnership with True Story FM. Engineering by Pete Wright. Music this week is by Super Neato. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we hope you'll consider doing just that for our show. But the best thing you can do to support the P2P Soap Box is simply to share the show with a friend or colleague. Thank you for listening.